Good morning and welcome to this week's Reset for Life video. In 2008, a woman named Velma Thomas went into cardiac arrest in her home. Interestingly enough, she lived in Nitro, West Virginia. Some of you will see the irony of that in a few moments. After 8 minutes of CPR, paramedics finally felt a faint pulse. She was rushed to the hospital where her heart stopped 2 more times and she was placed on life support. Eventually, doctors failed to detect any brain activity and she was declared clinically dead. 17 hours later, after her skin started to harden and her hands and toes began to curl, and 10 minutes after she was taken off life support and funeral arrangements were actually being made, Velma came back to life. She currently holds the world record for being dead the longest and coming back to life. She was declared to have had Lazarus syndrome, which is a spontaneous return of normal cardiac activity after failed attempts at resuscitation. Its name comes from, you guessed it, Lazarus, who was a friend of Jesus', who was raised from the dead by Jesus after being dead for 4 days. Bringing people back to life wasn't something new for Jesus. Besides his friend Lazarus, he had brought back to life the widow of Nain's son during the funeral procession, and he spoke to Jairus' daughter and brought her back to life as well. So for him, the impossible wasn't impossible. It might have seemed improbable, but obviously not impossible. In the last of our When God theme to these videos, today I want to talk to you about when God was resurrected. We looked last week at how Jesus, who was the Son of God in human form, died a criminal's death on the cross. He didn't stop being God, he just stopped acting like God. And that's a really important point to remember. When he died on the cross, he died to pay the price for the sins of humanity. Good Friday must not have been so good for the disciples as they wondered what to do next, really, after their teacher had died. And now on Easter Sunday, as 2 women went to the gravesite, they found out that Jesus was true to his word. He had promised to rise from the dead again in Matthew 16, verse 21. And when they got to the tomb, they looked inside and he was gone. The angel told them that Jesus had risen just as he said that he would. Here's the interesting part. You see, the Pharisees made it literally impossible for Jesus' body to be stolen and for the disciples to declare that he was resurrected, even if he wasn't. They had made sure that guards were posted at the door of the tomb so that it was impossible for the disciples to steal his body. Now, maybe you remember what Sherlock Holmes said. He said this: when you've eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. So the only other explanation for why Jesus wasn't there was that he was resurrected. As improbable as it sounds, it's the only explanation that makes sense. You know, it only takes one reliable witness that a jury finds believable for a conviction to take place in a court of law. In the story of Jesus' resurrection, there were at least 516 personal witnesses to his resurrection. There were the 2 ladies that met him in the garden where the tomb was. He spoke to 2 of his followers as they walked on the road down to Emmaus. He appeared to the remaining 11 disciples, and he was seen by 500 other people at one time, according to 1 Corinthians 15, verse 6. And then lastly, he was seen by the Apostle Paul himself. Here we have at least 516 witnesses, all saying the exact same thing. Some of you may remember the name Charles Colson. He served as special counsel to President Nixon during the Watergate affair, and he served 7 months for his part in that scandal. In 1973, Charles became a Christian and later became a Christian author and a conference speaker. He said this, and this is really important. I want you to catch this. He said, "I know the resurrection is a fact, and Watergate proved it to me." How, he says? Because 12 men testified that they had seen Jesus raised from the dead. Then they proclaimed that truth for 40 years, never once denying it. Everyone was beaten and tortured and stoned and put in prison, and they would not have endured that if it were not true. Watergate, on the other hand, embroiled 12 of the most powerful men in the world, and they couldn't keep alive for 3 weeks. You're telling me, he says, that 12 apostles could keep alive for 40 years? Absolutely impossible. Romans 8:11 says that it was God's power that raised Christ from the dead. The resurrection, friends, is an absolutely pivotal point and a pivotal truth in our Christian faith. The resurrection literally proves everything. As I said on Sunday to our church, if Jesus didn't rise from the dead, then every promise that he made would have been broken. Every truth that he spoke would have been a lie, and every miracle that he performed would have been counterfeit. If Jesus didn't rise from the dead, then there is no hope, there's no peace, there's no forgiveness, and there's no unconditional love. In fact, everything would have been a lie. Can I challenge you, please don't pass over this very, very essential truth too quickly. The resurrection is literally key. It is critical to our Christian faith. The resurrection is everything. If it doesn't happen, then we're not here today, and the gospel message is simply empty promises and cruel false hope. However, if it did happen, then everything changes. With the resurrection comes verification that everything that Jesus said and did was true. There is no single event in the history of mankind that has made such an impact on humanity as the resurrection of Jesus. It was the day when death died. It was the day when sin was defeated. It was the day when hope sprang eternal and truth prevailed. That's my Reset for Life word for today. God bless.